The Acog was a very prestigious site in Rainbow Six Siege, all the way back to when the game first started out, and Bandit and Jaeger did have their Acogs, but slowly and surely the Acog is starting to fade away from the meta. With operators like Bandit, Jaeger and Maestro all losing their Acogs, there's a reason why they are being taken out, and there is also a reason why many players are starting to fade away from that site. But the real sad story here is that Tachanka hasn't even had his rework. One day it will arrive. But there are also many reasons why players are moving away from the Acog, and there are a lot of benefits to switching away to increase your gameplay performance, and I'm going to be covering these today, as well as explaining a few changes that have been happening in Rainbow Six Siege. If this video does help you out or you enjoy it, be sure to drop a like on the video, and without further ado, let's dive on into it. Now, shortly after Operation Health, Operation Blood Orchid came around, and with that patch, a big change was introduced. If you didn't already know, Jaeger and Bandit did have access to an Acog, but it did get taken away in that patch, and that was a massive change for Rainbow Six Siege, as going on in the future, no 2-speed or 3-speed operator would be given access to an Acog on defense, and that meant you could no longer snipe people from the very edge of the map on plane with a Jaeger or Bandit Acog. And then another hit came along. With Maestro, with his Elder, he got his Acog removed. This did take place in a Year 4 Season 3 patch that came along, and Maestro got his Acog taken out of the game. And to this date still, the Siege community still reminisces in Maestro's Acog and Jaeger and Bandit's Acog. And let's just say, it definitely didn't go unheard of. Now if we fast forward all the way over to Year 5 Season 2 Steel Wave, the one we are in now, the meta is definitely changing, and the Acog site isn't going to be used as much as it was before, and there are a few benefits to this, and I'm going to be covering them for you, giving you some tips and tricks on why you should be moving away from that Acog in every position. Now the Acog is a fantastic site, don't get me wrong, but you don't want to be using it in every single situation. The other sites we do have to offer are going to be the Red Dot, the Reflex and the Holographic. Now these sites are for more close range and medium range engagements. I'll be covering that in a second. And you might not know this, but there are quite a lot of benefits to running a holographic that are also going to improve your aim and your overall game performance. Now the Acog site is suited fairly well for those long range engagements, which means you are going to be able to pick enemies off from a long distance, as the Acog scope is going to be very zoomed in. The Acog works best at long and medium range engagements. However, the holographic works best at medium and close range engagements. Now, for the majority of the situations in Siege, a holographic site is going to be 10 times more beneficial, purely because of how up close and personal you do have to get with them, and running an Acog isn't going to suit you in all of those situations. Now, if you had two choices in Siege on whether you had to run an Acog for the rest of your lifetime or your career in Siege, or you had to run a holographic, which one would you pick? Now for this situation, I feel like most of you would run that holographic and choose to pick it. Let me know down below in the comments. Now I think the real reason why we would be picking the holographic here is because for the majority of the engagements, a holographic is going to suit it a lot more. The Acog is going to work in specific situations best, but when you do get up close range with it, it's going to be very hard to adapt and use it. Now in the past and as of right now, Pro League players are going to be switching over to the holographic for some situations. But then again, they also use the Acog in certain scenarios. Now just because the Acog wasn't a must pick like it was a year ago, that doesn't mean you have to stop using it. I'd recommend to pick it based on your map preference. Your operator choice shouldn't decide what site you are going to be using. Just because Sledge has the access to an Acog doesn't mean you have to pick it for every single map. Instead, what it does come down to is your playstyle and map preference. For example, a Pro League player like Pengu will be running a holographic for Sledge on Border, but then on Bank he's going to completely switch it up to an Acog with Sledge. There are a few reasons behind this. He might be playing in a different playstyle when using Sledge on those different maps, or quite frankly, because Bank is a bit of a longer map and you can get longer angles, he's going to be running that Acog. If you compare those two maps right here, Border is more often a short range engagement map, whereas Bank has got a lot of long angles that you can hold. That is what it comes down to, and that is why the holographic is making more of an appearance in those operator choices where you do have access to an Acog. As well, for an operator like Book, when you are going to be running that vertical play, picking a holographic is often going to suit you a little bit better, as you are going to be able to get a better angle from above. You don't have to run an Acog on every single attacker or defender. You can run that holographic. Pick it based on your playstyle and your map preference. It is completely okay to switch off that ACOG from an operator like Ace to a holographic. Next time you're selecting your operator and attachments, weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of running an ACOG for your playstyle and that map. Compare it to the other sides. Now, as the ACOG is slowly becoming less of the meta, and the holographic and more close range sights are going to be coming into the meta a little bit more, what are the benefits of this and why is it happening? A holographic sight is going to give you a much wider peripheral vision. Now what I mean by this is that when you are going to be zoomed in ADSing with your holographic sight, you can see a lot more of your surroundings compared to that ACOG sight. With the ACOG sight you'll be very tunnel visioned in a way and focusing on one object. Now some players in Siege love to rely on their surroundings, which is why it might be a little bit harder to track and flick onto different enemies with that ACOG sight purely because you're going to be a little bit more zoomed in. As well, it's also going to mean it's a lot easier to clear rooms. When clearing rooms, you're going to be looking at your surroundings, what areas you do need to clear and where enemies might be holding potential angles. Now you obviously use your game sense for this as well, but also that peripheral vision is going to come into a big factor here. Now when using a holographic at those longer ranges, it can be quite hard to pinpoint your enemy, which is why it can be great for training your aim at those longer distances when you are going to be using a smaller scope. Essentially what that is going to be doing is improving your aim at longer distances when you are trying to pinpoint a smaller target. It's going to be a lot harder to hit them, but if you start practicing with it and improving with it, it's going to help your aim in many areas. Overall, it has a lot of benefits. Now this does not mean that you only have to be using that holographic, as the reflex is also a fantastic sight that you can also put on if that is more of your personal preference for a more closer range sight. The sight choice that you are going to be running is also going to have a lot of effects on your movement. Often the ACOG can keep you tunnel visioned in, which will cause sometimes for other factors of the game to not be as focused on. This does not mean that you cannot have fantastic movement with an ACOG, as you completely can, but for newer players they won't be focusing on it too much, as that ACOG sight is so zoomed in that it isn't really going to come natural to them. This isn't a change that has just quickly come around. It's been happening for a long period of time and it's slowly and surely coming into more of a presence. There have been a lot of drastic changes in Rainbow Six Siege, and removing one of those ACOG sights from each operator has been a big change. This doesn't mean you have to be switching away from the ACOG sight and every weapon over to a holographic. Just put a little bit more thought into it when you're going to be choosing your sight and operator. Will the playstyle suit a holographic a little better, or will the map suit that ACOG? That is what you've got to take into account, and that is the decision that you've got to be making. And slowly but surely Rainbow Six Siege themselves have been working this change into place, when they removed Ash's ACOG, the SMG-11 ACOG, and as well Jaeger and Bandit and Maestro. Now also the holographics have been coming into play as well. Frost got a holographic added, as well as Kavira. So the real question is here, is who's going to lose their ACOG next? That is the question. I hope you have all enjoyed today's video, where we did cover the topic of ACOGs and holographics and which is going to be more of the meta in the future, as well as there's lots of tips and tricks embedded in there to help you out with your choice next time. If you enjoyed the video, or it did help you out in fact, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe for more tips and tricks like this one. Which site is your favourite in Rainbow Six Siege? I hope you all have an incredible rest of your day, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.